The moment I knew they'd gutted the soul out of this place, I was standing in the break room microwaving a sad little lean cuisine and heard Cheryl sobbing in the supply closet. Not a dainty, Lifetime movie cry either. This was full-bodied, guttural wailing, like her whole 401k had just been lit on fire. 30 minutes later, the efficiency officer strutted in like a Dollar General peacock and said we should all lean into the new org structure. Translation: we fired everyone but Monica because she's too competent to kill and too quiet to protest. 9 years. 9 years of knowing where every contract, login, spreadsheet, and screw-up was buried. I'd trained 3 managers, onboarded 6 interns, and once fixed a shipment issue in the middle of my father's funeral. Now I was sitting through a PowerPoint titled Maximizing Resource Optimization while my teammates packed up their severance boxes and left like ghosts through the lobby. They didn't even pretend. No title bump, no bonus. Just handed me 6 inboxes, 4 roles, and a new calendar that looked like it had been designed by a sadist with a caffeine problem. Oh, and if you could just make sure vendor communication stays tight during this transition. One of the VPs said with a wink, like he was tossing me a birthday cupcake instead of a logistical minefield. So I smiled. I nodded. I went back to my desk, opened a fresh folder on my desktop and labeled it in all caps, cover my A, and then I started tracking everything. Every missed PO number, every unapproved expense, every project I volunteered for because no one else was left to do it. By the way, 97% of folks who hear these stories never hit the follow button. If you're one of the quiet lurkers, a simple subscribe really fuels the team behind this madness. Plus, it helps us keep sharing these corporate train wrecks before HR slaps a gag order on us. Back to it, they called it a streamlining success. I called it a slow, bureaucratic implosion. Day 1 post-layoffs, the head of procurement sent me an email asking if I had the supplier matrix. I did because I made it. Finance asked if I could fix a reconciliation error just this once. I did, because I'd already fixed it the past 4 times silently while they congratulated each other on cross-functional synergy. My job wasn't a job anymore. It was janitorial, clerical, emotional, and occasionally spiritual. I babysat egos, cleaned up digital vomit, and organized their incompetence into color-coded Google Sheets. One day, an intern asked me if I was like a coordinator or something. I told him I was the duct tape holding the Titanic together. He laughed. I didn't. And the kicker? Every single task they tossed my way came with 0 guidance, 0 SOPs, and 0 context. Just Slack messages like, "Can you handle vendor onboarding?" or "Need you to follow up on the ERP sync issue before close of business." ERP sync? I hadn't even seen the ERP system. But guess who figured it out, documented the process, fixed the issue, and quietly trained herself via YouTube videos at 11 p.m.? Yeah, Monica from logistics, patron saint of unpaid expertise. Some nights I'd stare at my screen and wonder if I'd been cursed at birth to eternally support mediocre men with LinkedIn buzzwords tattooed on their resumes. I was becoming invisible, so efficient they forgot I had a pulse. That's when it hit me, they didn't even see me anymore, not really. I was a resource, not a human. They'd emptied my team and filled me with tasks like a goddamn vending machine. But I kept my mouth shut, I smiled at meetings. I sent calendar invites, I fixed what broke, and behind the scenes, I started building my exit, not with a bang, with quiet little clicks. One document at a time, one breadcrumb at a time, one silent contingency plan at a time. Because if they thought I was just gonna keep eating shit and printing labels while they gave themselves performance bonuses, they were gonna learn, the hard way, what happens when the duct tape walks away. Thursday morning. Some grinning middle manager brought donuts to the all-hands meeting like we were celebrating a goddamn baby shower, not the mass exodus of half the logistics team. New efficiency officer stood at the front with his 2 white teeth and said the transition had been seamless. That was the word. Seamless. I nearly choked on my coffee. Apparently the disappearance of Cheryl, Damon, Lena, and the rest of my team hadn't slowed anything down. Funny how seamless it feels when one person picks up all the shattered pieces and tapes them together in the dark. They said it was a testament to the resilience of our workforce. No, it was a testament to me. Skipping lunch, staying late, and fixing the same broken purchase order in 3 different systems because nobody else bothered to learn how any of it worked. Procurement lost its only bilingual coordinator. So guess who's suddenly emailing vendors in rusty high school Spanish? Finance forgot that inventory reconciliation requires access to the actual warehouse logs, which only Damon had access to, or used to. Now it's me digging through 3-year-old SharePoint folders like a digital archaeologist. And customer service? They couldn't reset a password without calling me. Hey Monica, real quick, do you know why the ticketing system's not assigning priorities correctly anymore? Yes, because you unlinked the macro filter in the main view, because you don't know what that means. Because I've been silently fixing your mistakes for weeks. So in the meetings, clapped each other on the back and marveled at how agile our org had become. Meanwhile, I was 2 spreadsheets deep into reconciling freight costs for shipment no one told me about until the client started screaming. But I said nothing. just kept smiling like a polite little robot with a grudge and a working knowledge of every system on the floor. And that's when I started logging. Not just the work I did, what they didn't. Every time I fixed a missing approval, every report I submitted for someone else, every time I found an error that would have embarrassed the entire department if left unchecked. I created a Google sheet titled Invisible Labor and color-coded it like a crime scene. I didn't know if I'd ever need it, but something in my gut said I might. There was one moment that stuck with me. Greg, the VP of Operations, accidentally CC'd me on an email thread. It was just him and the CFO discussing the excellent reallocation of duties. He wrote, "Monica seems to be thriving. Might be able to cut more fat next quarter." Thriving, that's what he called it. Me crying in the shower at midnight while learning to write XML code from a Reddit thread so our inventory sync wouldn't implode. I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot and added it to the folder. Kept stacking tasks on my desk like I was a forklift with a good attitude. No questions, no raises, just more. I was now overseeing vendor performance, tracking KPI metrics I never agreed to, and manually generating reports someone else used in meetings to look competent. I once watched a junior manager present my entire Q1 analysis with a straight face like he birthed it from Excel himself. By the end of the month, I was running silent patches across procurement, logistics, and client services, cleaning up after people who didn't know I was the reason their dashboards still worked. And the more I did, the more invisible I became. They didn't ask me how things were going. They just assumed if nothing was burning, it meant the system was perfect. Not that someone was in the walls with a wrench and a grudge, keeping the plumbing from exploding. But I knew better. And I was getting real tired of being the janitor for a circus where the clowns thought they were running the tent. It started with a folder. Just a small, plain folder tucked deep inside the company drive, innocuously named Monthly Logs Archive. Inside it, the pulse of 3 departments. Vendor history, client order corrections, every invoice audit I'd run when finance couldn't find its own ass with both hands and a flashlight. No one asked where the numbers came from. It just smiled when the reports magically matched. I figured if I was going to be the skeleton holding this paper skyscraper upright, I might as well control which bones cracked when I walked away. So I built it, quietly, meticulously, like a woman laying tripwires in a field of wet matches. Step 1, I rewired the comms, auto-forwarding rules, smart filters, flagged keywords. If anyone used the wrong vendor code or typed the phrase urgent shipment, it landed in a secret inbox only I monitored. Not because I wanted to help, because I wanted to know exactly where the next fire would start without them knowing I saw the smoke. Step 2, shared drives but not real shared. A tiered permission system. A pretty dashboard for them to gawk at, and a shadow sheet for me, color-coded, time-stamped with notes like, Janine did not request backup approval. Check invoice 8821. My version had logic formulas. Their version had rainbow charts and polite labels. Guess which one they trusted? Then came the SOPs. Not the ones in the company wiki, those were outdated trash that referenced employees who'd been laid off 3 restructures ago. I made new ones. Real ones, dozens, but I didn't upload them. I printed them, hole-punched them, and kept them in a labeled binder locked in my bottom drawer. Because if I vanished, no one would know how to refund a vendor without triggering a duplicate payment flag. That wasn't an accident. And the best part? I sprinkled just enough efficiency fairy dust on everything that they didn't want to know how it worked. I became their comfort blanket. The Monica will handle it reflex kicked in so hard, half the office couldn't tell you where our master shipping log even lived. Hint, it was on my personal Google Drive under a file name disguised as a failed PowerPoint deck from 2019. And oh, the traps, not malicious, just inconvenient, like setting all the account logins to auto-expire unless manually refreshed, or formatting a critical formula in the Q3 dashboard that broke if someone sorted the rows alphabetically. One click and the whole report turned into a swamp of zeros. They never noticed, because I fixed it before they saw it, but if I wasn't there, heck. I even created a feedback form that looked like it sent to HR but actually routed to a dead inbox, just to see if anyone would ask about it. No one did, because no one knew what I was doing, not really. They thought I was just good with systems. I wasn't good, I was the system. I documented everything for myself and nothing for them. Why would I? The moment I made it easy to replace me, they'd try. And I wasn't going down like Cheryl, who handed over every contact list before they sent her a best of luck fruit basket and locked her out by noon. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was staging a symphony. A quiet, ticking rhythm of dependencies and dead ends. I wanted them to feel safe, to trust the silence. So when the silence became permanent, they'd hear it echo. They'd remember exactly who kept the lights on. You ever seen someone vanish while still breathing? That was me. I became office wallpaper, neutral-toned, functional, and entirely ignored. They stopped CCing me, stopped inviting me to brainstorms, which was funny since I was the brainstorm, the follow-up, and the contingency plan wrapped into one overworked woman with a 3-year-old laptop and chronic shoulder pain. There was a moment Tuesday, 2:14 p.m., burned itself into my brain. A junior exec named Skylar, yes, really managed to delete an entire quarter's worth of logistics forecasting. Just poof, gone. I got the Slack ping 10 seconds later. Not from him, no, from his assistant, because Skylar was too busy hyperventilating and blaming cloud sync errors. Monica, do we have a backup? Of course we did. I had 5. I restored it in 30 seconds, not a word of thanks, not a nod in the hallway. He presented the data the next morning like he had fixed it himself. I watched it all unfold while sipping the world's saddest coffee from a paper cup with lipstick stains I couldn't identify. Then came the memo. One of those bland corporate updates HR sends out to remind us we're all part of the Bristol family. Tucked between some bullet points about Q4 goals and a charity bake sale. There it was, a sentence so casual it practically farted in my direction. Some roles across logistics may be automated or consolidated further next quarter. Many, like Monica's coordinator position, are considered easily replaceable due to standardized process documentation. Standardized process documentation. I stared at that sentence for a full minute. My blood didn't boil, it calcified, because I never gave them process docs. I purposefully didn't. So that meant one of them, some greasy little clipboard goblin, had looked at my output and assumed the magic just happened. That my job could be uploaded into an app and run by someone named Trevor for $18/hour and a meal stipend. They didn't even know what I did and still decided I wasn't worth keeping. So I smiled, I closed the memo, and I quietly made a new folder. This one was titled Escape Velocity. Inside, a to-do list with one item, make the silence hurt. That week I began scrubbing. Not deleting, no, that would be too obvious. Just easing my fingerprints off things. I restructured file ownership so the systems still looked active, but if someone tried to tweak them, they'd trip into dead links and version mismatches. I removed autofill tags from key vendors. Changed macros to require manual refreshes. Slowly, quietly, I was unplugging cords while keeping the lights on, and no one noticed because no one looked. My invisibility had turned into insulation. I became the ghost in the server room, never seen, always assumed. They trusted the silence because the silence worked. My name only came up when things broke, and I made sure nothing broke. Yet, every task I completed, another nail in the coffin they were building for me, so I kept hammering, kept smiling, kept playing my part while the foundations started to rot underneath their shiny, clueless shoes. They thought I was replaceable? Then they'd better have a backup for everything. Because the moment I stepped off this carousel, it wasn't just going to stop spinning. It was going to fly apart. The PTO request went in like a whisper. No fanfare. Just a calendar block labeled OOO personal time and a form submitted through the black hole they call the HR portal. 7 business days, approved in under 6 minutes. No questions asked. Of course they didn't question it. I hadn't taken a real vacation in 4 years. Last time I tried, they called me 3 times during my nephew's birthday because someone accidentally shipped 300 gallons of caulking solution to a preschool. But this time, I had a plan. I booked a cabin in upstate New York, middle of nowhere. No Wi-Fi, no cell service. Just pine trees, a wood stove, and the sweet hum of nobody needing a goddamn thing from me. In the weeks leading up to it, I started pulling levers. Slowly, silently, access permissions changed. I cleaned up the shared drives, archived everything useful behind a series of nested folders with vague names like Q2 Legacy compiled and Temp Backups Final 2. The SOPs, still locked in my drawer, of course. I removed myself from calendar invites, stopped sending deadline reminders, and let minor mistakes live just long enough to sting. Then came the auto-replies. I queued them up like little bombs set to detonate at 8:01 a.m. Monday. Hi there, I'm currently out of office with no access to email. For urgent procurement questions, please contact procurement ops at bristolsolutions.com. Except that inbox hadn't been checked since Darnell got laid off in April. For vendor escalations, please refer to the escalation protocol outlined in the shared resource folder. Spoiler, that folder didn't exist. For all other issues, please reach out to your department lead, if they even had one. Some teams were being run by interns fresh out of orientation, armed with vibes and a MacBook. Meanwhile, I stopped doing the little favors. No more last-minute calendar merges. No fixing broken formulas over lunch. No late-night Slack replies that started with, "Hey Monica, quick question." They noticed, but only in that vague, confused way middle managers do, like walking into a room and forgetting why you're there. A few people pinged me with, "Hey, just checking messages." I replied with canned lines like following standard procedure, now smiling face with smiling eyes, and watched their confusion blossom like slow-acting poison. And on my last day, I sent one final email. Subject, delegation of responsibilities. All responsibilities have been delegated per protocol. Please consult your department lead if further clarification is required. Best, Monica there. Polite, professional, cryptic as hell, because there was no protocol. I made the whole damn protocol. I was the protocol. And now I was walking away. I shut down my laptop, handed it to IT with a smile, and walked out the revolving door like a woman being paroled. My inbox was clean. My conscience, cleaner. Whatever came next, missed deadlines, panicked emails, supply chain fires, I wouldn't be there to catch the shrapnel. I wasn't just going off-grid, I was cutting the lifeline. Monday morning hit like a brick through a stained glass window. At exactly 8:17 a.m., the phones in procurement lit up like a Christmas tree on meth. No one could find the updated vendor list. Not the contacts, not the tax forms, not the discount schedules Monica had lovingly curated like a neurotic wedding planner, obsessed with napkin folds. The intern managing the inbox, poor kid named Milo, forwarded 3 separate vendor emails to his own personal Gmail just to keep the clients from walking. In finance, things were already sliding into a full-body panic. The projections dashboard was broken, just columns of hash 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 where numbers should be. Brittany from accounts payable started crying when she realized the auto-sync to their reporting software had been disconnected. Someone muttered, "Just ask Monica," and then they all looked at each other like kids who just realized mom wasn't coming back from the store. IT thought it was a permissions issue. Classic IT move, blame the system, not the human-shaped vacuum that just ripped out the spine of half the infrastructure. Her logins aren't pinging the server. The IT guy said, scratching his head like the Wi-Fi owed him rent. No, she turned her laptop in, remember? Someone said, like physically, to you? Oh, right. Meanwhile, Monica's desk sat like a crime scene. Immaculate, wiped. The only thing left behind was a yellow sticky note on the monitor with the words use index scrawled in black ink. There was no index. Someone tried to open her personal Google Drive folder and got a permission error. Someone else opened her email and found the auto reply still chirping. Please refer to the escalation protocol. What escalation protocol? Janine from customer service sent out a mass Teams message that said, "Anyone know where Monica saved the Q3 forecast assumptions?" Clients are asking. The only reply came from a marketing associate. Who's Monica? By 10:22 a.m. Entire 6th floor was operating on collective fumes and caffeine-fueled dread. Shipment delays started trickling in. Clients were calling for status updates that no one could confirm. Vendor disputes began piling up. No one had access to the notes Monica kept in her cryptically named folder structure. One folder was literally labeled LOL, not this one, and inside was a spreadsheet with formulas, so arcane they may as well have required a Ouija board. Legal tried to step in. They opened a shared drive titled Contractual Audit Trails and found nothing, just empty folders. Every document had been moved or relinked and the shortcuts were dead. Her calendar was blank, her inbox locked, her notes? Oh, her notes were delicious chaos. Someone found a printed list taped under her keyboard tray, 20 bullet points, each one just vague enough to make you feel like you'd missed the joke. Red pen equals duplicate invoice, check Darnell's drawer before Friday, never trust figures from Consolidated Ops. Janine knows, but doesn't know she knows cryptic breadcrumbs. Like the Zodiac Killer took a pivot table class. By noon, people were fighting over who would just pick up the slack for now. One brave soul attempted to run the freight reconciliation sheet and promptly crashed Excel. Another accidentally emailed a vendor a 2022 quote with the subject line urgent, need updated pricing, and CC'd a now-defunct procurement address. The silence she left behind wasn't just absence. It was vacuum, pressure drop. A gut punch to every arrogant assumption they'd made about how streamlined things were. Monica hadn't ghosted them. She'd unzipped herself from their mess like an escape artist. Now they were trapped in the labyrinth she used to walk blindfolded, backward in heels. By 1:40 p.m. Monday, the executive suite was vibrating with the panicked energy of a Waffle House kitchen during a hurricane. Every inbox was a crime scene. The client shipment dashboard looked like a battlefield, half red, half error, missing data. No one could explain why 12 orders had vanished from the tracking system, or why the carrier account was suddenly suspended for duplicate routing IDs. The CEO, who hadn't spoken to Monica in over a year, sent a furious all-staff message about urgent cross-functional collaboration. Meanwhile, mid-level managers were elbow-deep in inboxes they didn't recognize, clicking through threads with subject lines like FWD, urgent need updated COI plus EIN match before EFT push, and realizing none of it made sense without Monica's invisible touch. Client relations was in full collapse. Their CRM tool kept auto-forwarding escalation tickets to a shared inbox labeled Legacy Team CS2, which hadn't been used since 2020. Support agents were manually copying and pasting client complaints into spreadsheets just to keep track. One poor rep, Tara, had logged 67 back-to-back tickets that all led to vendors Monica used to manage single-handedly with one hand on her keyboard and the other holding her dignity together with dental floss. Invoice payments began bouncing, literally. Turns out, Monica had been flagging discrepancies in ACH routing numbers for months, quietly updating them behind the scenes without ever claiming credit. Without her, one department paid the same supplier twice, another paid the wrong supplier. Procurement started eating its own tail. Then came the calls. The first was from VP of Ops, Greg, the same Greg who'd once said she was easily replaceable. He tried Monica's cell, straight to voicemail. He tried again, same thing, just that gentle. Final ring before the robotic lady said Monica wasn't available. No callback, no read receipt, nothing. Then he called HR. What the hell is going on? He barked. We need her access reinstated. Where is she? HR, sweet, brittle HR, went into the system and pulled up her PTO request. A week off, approved, filed cleanly. With notes fully offline, all responsibilities delegated per protocol. They stared at it in silence. There's no protocol, someone whispered. Greg blanched. She made that up? Yes, and then he really started to sweat, because HR had also just discovered the second half of the form. Monica had attached a document, just one page, titled Contingency Delegation Matrix. It was blank, white as snow, no roles, no names, no instructions, just a footer that said, if you have questions, consult previous documentation. There was no previous documentation. Across the hall, legal was now asking why 5 of their active contracts had missing compliance audits Monica used to handle manually every quarter. No alerts had gone out. No backups were scheduled. The attorney responsible for vendor relations sent a Teams message. Where's the audit trail? Someone replied, Monica had it. Silence. Another VP tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. They pinged her personal email. Got an auto reply, this address is not monitored. Please contact your department lead. Which department? Who knew? They all thought someone else had inherited her work. But now, sitting in conference rooms with empty notepads and caffeine sweats, they were piecing it together. She'd been the glue, the gears, the goddamn engine, and now? They were choking on the smoke of their own incompetence, screaming into inboxes that used to hum with quiet, controlled order. Nobody heard them. Monica was gone, and the silence was getting louder. Tuesday morning, just before the office's second collective panic attack-fueled pot of coffee could finish brewing, legal got 3 emails from an address not in the Bristol system. The subject line of the first one simply read, Vendor Contract 8817 Re, Compliance Risk. Inside was a PDF, timestamped 6 weeks ago, with Monica's annotations in red. The contract in question, one of their highest volume overseas suppliers, was missing required tax disclosures, had no clause for returns, and violated 2 international shipping ordinances. Monica had flagged it. She'd emailed procurement twice. No one responded, and now the paper trail was in legal's lap with her calm, lethal note at the top. As no action was taken, I've escalated per documented channels. Except there were no channels, just her. And now she was gone. The second email hit 5 minutes later. Subject, Q2 Financials Internal Mismatch Risk, Private. Attached, a screenshot of the spreadsheet finance had submitted to investors, highlighted in yellow, were duplicate revenue line items from a canceled contract. Monica's notes explained how the same revenue had been reported twice, creating a short-term bump that smoothed out the dip in client churn. Buried in the email was one line that made the blood drain from the CFO's face. Per Sarbanes-Oxley, these entries, if knowingly misreported, could trigger audit complications. Please consult external compliance advisors immediately. The CFO called for an internal review before the email finished syncing across legal's server. 4 minutes later, they looped in external. 2 hours after that, Bristol's auditor, who had never once been summoned mid-cycle, was en route to conduct a brief preliminary assessment. HR was still trying to figure out how all this was being sent from a personal email address when the third email arrived. Subject, Formal resignation, Monica L. Carver, dated exactly 1 month from today. It was short. It was final. Please consider this my irrevocable resignation effective date. I will not be returning from PTO and have fulfilled all documented obligations. Please route any future correspondence through official legal channels. Respectfully, Monica L. Carver. The room fell into absolute stillness. One of the HR reps actually stood up and left the building. Just walked out like she suddenly remembered she left her stove on in another country. That afternoon, the CEO, who'd been remote working from his lake house, showed up in person. No tie, wrinkled shirt, eyebrows locked in a position between how did this happen? Can we sue someone? He called an emergency all hands. It wasn't a Zoom call. It was the kind of old-school, in-person reckoning that makes grown men sweat through their undershirts. He stood in front of a projector that refused to cooperate and said, "We're entering a transition period." Half the room didn't even know what was happening yet. The other half was too busy trying to figure out if they were implicated in the contracts, the financials, or just the plain, humiliating fact that their entire system had depended on one woman they called replaceable. The only words anyone remembered from that meeting were, "The auditors will be on site by Thursday." By 4 p.m., finance had pulled 3 people into closed-door sessions. By 5, legal froze access to 2 shared drives. And by 6, someone in marketing, yes, marketing, whispered into a Slack channel, "Was Monica, like, some kind of mastermind?" Yes, she was. By Friday, the building had gone from chaos to coma. Procurement was dead in the water. Nobody could authorize POs above a certain threshold, and the vendor system kept auto-rejecting any changes made without Monica's login. IT tried brute-forcing their way in. The system flagged their activity as suspicious and locked 3 accounts. Somewhere in the background, a service ticket from a panicked supplier in Malaysia sat unanswered. Subject line: urgent. Shipment held in port. No response from Bristol. Customer service? Collapsed like a folding chair under a linebacker. The support queue had ballooned to 1,700 tickets. The chatbot Monica configured to triage issues had reverted to default settings and was now cheerfully telling customers, "Thank you for your inquiry. Our team will respond within 2-3 weeks." Finance was paralyzed. The internal audit team, now triple-staffed and shaking, had uncovered more creative accounting than a mob-run car wash. External auditors were nesting in the boardroom, whispering terms like retroactive exposure and investor misrepresentation. And Monica? Her job was back on the website. Same title, same responsibilities, with a 40% salary increase, and 2 assistant positions listed under it. The listing said, immediate opening, urgent need, hybrid eligible. The comment section on the internal job board was lit up with disbelief. Isn't this Monica's job? Wait, she was doing all this solo? I thought 3 departments were managing this. We are so screwed. The CFO, officially on administrative leave pending investigation. His calendar went from 6 meetings a day to 1 cold, colorless entry. Legal review. 1 VP, Greg, naturally, wandered into an impromptu strategy session with legal, pale and sweating through his designer button-up. Midway through someone explaining just how exposed they were on supplier liability, Greg leaned back in his chair and muttered, "Who the hell let one woman run this much?" The room went silent, not out of shame, out of awe, because they knew the truth. They hadn't let her run it, they needed her to. And now that she was gone, the machine she held together with digital duct tape and quiet fury was coughing blood. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Catskills, Monica sat on the creaking porch of her rented cabin with a mug of coffee and no reception. No emails, no Slack, no frantic voicemails from executives realizing they'd built an empire on her unpaid overtime. She was wearing sweatpants. Her hair was tied back in a lazy knot. A squirrel was terrorizing the bird feeder to her left. Peace, in other words. Uncut, high-grade, soul-realigning peace. She hadn't turned on her phone all week. It need to, because somewhere far away, a system was collapsing under its own smug weight. And Monica, she wasn't there to catch the pieces. She was free, she was done. And the silence, it finally belonged to her. This wasn't just payback, it was precision. Sometimes the most powerful move in a toxic workplace isn't confrontation, it's letting the chaos you've been holding together finally show itself. In the end, silence can speak louder than any HR complaint ever could. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.